I share what I'm listening to and my thoughts on music and the business daily for free at helloyassine.com. What's poppin', y'all? Iggy Azalea is the next person that wants to show out and complain about Universal Music, which Universal Music has been having some interesting developments as of the past year and a half or so, with them going through it with TikTok, removing their music, falling back on that. I feel like that was the most undercover things ever. I did a whole documentary on it, though. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. But eventually they got back good with TikTok, but she said the following: "Crazy how in my entire career I was never paid a single royalty by Universal Music for anything outside of the USA. They owe me millions of dollars in back pay that they technically stole from me as per my contract due payment. The amount owed is in the 8-figure range. Last week they tried to respond to my lawyer and offer me a settlement of $18K, which this is crazy. I'm told this is a normal response from their lawyers, and after appearing in court they end up paying millions as they're supposed to. Thankfully I'm well off and can and will pursue this issue until they pay me what they owe. But I'd like to publicly say that I think Universal Music are criminals who actively take advantage of all of their artists in perpetuity for their own gain." That sounds like a corporation to me. Isn't that what they're supposed to do? "They are the scummiest company, and they do this to so many artists who unfortunately can't afford to fight what they're owed. Thus, they get away with this behavior. Universal Music really needs to do better in their treatment of the artists who quite literally earn the millions via intellectual property they had zero part in creating. Yuck." We're going to address this in a moment. She continues on to say on Twitter, "Universal Music, mark my words, you ugly bitch, you will pay me what's owed. This has been going on between myself and them privately for over 2 years and counting, by the way." So let me start off with giving the haters' response, and then let's give an actual genuine response. So the haters' response would come from some element of ignorance. So the haters' response, which is the response that I would like to give, I wouldn't necessarily consider myself a hater, but we see Iggy Azalea, you guys start to hate, and I'm kind of with you on that. She was largely trash, but people will say, in fairness, Iggy Azalea had a lot of money spent on her. When you think about how quickly it felt like you suddenly started hearing Fancy everywhere and seeing Iggy Azalea everywhere, despite it feeling at the same time that nobody liked her, especially within hip-hop, the same thing that Drake was putting in a petition to sue or had an issue with Universal Music for allegedly doing for Kendrick Lamar is what they also did for Drake, but what they also for sure did for none other than Iggy Azalea, because you started to see her everywhere. Her songs were charting, etc. So what do you think that costs? Well, $5 million? $10 million? I wouldn't be surprised if they dumped over $10 million in just a couple of years, 2 to 3 years, on Iggy Azalea. And then that's just in the marketing and promotion, let alone you talk about all the transport costs, all these other things. Now, Iggy Azalea is not stupid. This is the thing that I want everyone to know. And this is something that I've actually learned in the past, I would say, year or two, especially the way that she got into the crypto space and she earned a big bag there. She was able to garner a lot of respect and a brand and do some genuine stuff in that space, to be fair, but this isn't a channel about crypto and it doesn't benefit me to talk about that at all. But I just want to give her props in that realm to paint a more accurate picture of her. With that being said, what she is saying is she never got a single royalty by Universal for anything outside of the US. This is the problem here, because Iggy Azalea, while we will say that, yeah, sure, maybe they spent a bunch of money on her, this is how it works. They'll spend a bunch of money. Let's say they gave her an advance already. She has to pay that back, and she probably has a royalty split. Let's say it's 80-20, which is generous. Usually artists get less than 20. Usually they start off at 12 to 15, but bigger artists can get up to 20. So they don't see any of, let's just say 20 for easy numbers. They don't get any of that 20% until the entire debt is paid off. So if they spent, let's say, $10 million on marketing and all these associated costs for Iggy Azalea, then Iggy Azalea wouldn't see any of that 20% until that $10 million is paid. And then I think eventually, after a certain amount of time elapses and it's paid off, I think the splits switch. I'm not entirely sure. But regardless, so let's say her music did get paid off, especially globally, because Iggy Azalea was listened to a lot in Australia, of course, in the UK, throughout Europe, throughout places in Asia as well. I don't know about the Middle East as much. Africa, it's not really going to generate much money there anyway. especially when it comes to like streaming and things like that. I would say Brazil, Mexico, Canada as well. Those are places where it could, largely South America too, where Iggy Azalea's music was likely being spread. Like, she was a genuine pop star. So everybody was listening to it. It was basic songs that are palatable to a global audience. So there's a lot of royalties that are being collected, and I don't know if this is a publishing thing or a royalty thing, but she's asking about royalties, but there's a lot to be collected, and it's Universal's job to collect that globally for Iggy and then pay her out. And I don't think she's the first artist that's going through this, and I actually like what she's doing here, because most other artists go through this, but they're not digging into their label, or they're not auditing their label. And people will give their own opinions about Russ, but Russ talks about this a lot. If you're not looking into your own money, then you don't know if you're getting robbed or not. So in her case, she believes she's owed a ton of money, and she may very well be right. Her music has generated so much, and it was during an era where a lot of sales were happening too. So CDs were selling, and she's probably she's not able to track this. The company has to track this, and then the company hasn't paid her, and she's like, why am I not getting any royalty payments outside of the US? I'm guessing now she's recouped, so she's getting royalties from in the US. But most artists are like, I'm getting, and this is the thing, I think Iggy Azalea is in a great position, and I wouldn't say this is revolutionary, that's gassing it, that's too strong of a word, but I think this is a very important thing, because most artists that are still successful wouldn't do what Iggy Azalea is doing right now, because they may get into an issue with their record label. Maybe they'll get halted. Like, for example, Drake is somewhat trying to do this right now, and people were alleging that they were holding back his project, but they didn't. Nokia's performing very well. Organically, somewhat. It depends on how you define organic. But they didn't hold back this album with Party Next Door. So there's also the incentive for the artist to stay quiet, because they're also getting money. So you don't really start to look at your books until your money's not coming in the way it once was. Like, for example, if someone's getting $1 million a year and then 20, 30 grand somehow is missing, they don't really notice it. But when that $1 million goes down to 100 grand, and now you're like, where's this 20 to 30 grand that I'm supposed to be getting? And then you're like, wait, I didn't get it these past years too. So a lot of artists, they're still making money, and they're making money from so many different angles that it's hard to keep track of all of this. So they don't even think to audit the label or look into what's going on or how much they're potentially owed, and they're probably getting new advances because they're still dropping albums. But Iggy Azalea basically retired from music, at least the music industry, or got blackballed or kicked out, whatever you want to call it, several years ago. So she had to do not only her own project independently, which I wouldn't necessarily call it a flop. It was a flop in comparison to the heights that we saw her, that Universal helped to bring her to. But she got to see that side of the business, and I think she saw how much money she made there, and she probably took a proportion ratio and said, hold on, I'm missing out on a lot. And now she still has a ton of money, partially because of crypto stuff. She seemed to have handled her money well while she had a career, and now she's thinking to herself, okay, my music career is over. I don't plan on coming back to music. They've made it known that I'm not going to be a superstar ever again, and I'm fine with that. And she's a mom now, or she's basically a baby mama now, and she's got nothing better to do than to go through with this. And I think this is a great example. This is an example of somebody that is doing something that stands to benefit a lot of other artists, as opposed to Drake, where he's really only doing it for himself because Kendrick Lamar got gassed up. Iggy Azalea is doing something where I think it can help a lot of artists in the future, especially if she's able to get them to pay out the millions of dollars that they owe her. And then she could probably help out a lot of other artists after this too. So shout out to Iggy Azalea for doing this, for taking it to Universal Music. I will completely disagree with her on this one statement though, where she says these guys earned millions via intellectual property they had zero part in creating. They had part in distributing it and making people like it. If people didn't like it, if people didn't consume it, it doesn't matter that you own the intellectual property. A lot of artists own the intellectual property on their hard drive and nobody's listening to it. What does that mean it's worth? At that moment in time, nothing. But hey, maybe they give it as a demo. Maybe someone else hops on the track. Now someone decides to promote the track. Now the track is huge. Now that IP is worth a lot more than it was before. So just because they didn't necessarily create it, they did assist in creating the value for the product. So that's something I'll never take away from companies. And, I'm not here to glaze a damn corporation, but I'm also not here to just pretend and point the finger and say, oh, this person evil or this thing is evil and this is good, when things are in a lot more of a gray area. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Go to helloyassine.com, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Peace.